From Monday, there's going to be no countries on Ireland's green list. EU foreign ministers will decide on adopting a new traffic light system, which will see member states branded red, green, orange or grey at a meeting next Tuesday. I can't follow this at all, but maybe Eoghan Corry, who'll be able to shine one of those lights, red, green, orange or grey, on the subject. Eoghan, good morning.
Good morning. It's with great difficulty I'm following it myself, I can tell you.
Yeah, exactly what is happening. I mean, I know what the green list is, and the green list had a whole load of countries on it, and then the green list became a very small green list, and now we don't have a green list anymore. What does the EU traffic light system mean?
The EU traffic light system means that unrestricted travel should take place across the borders of Europe, except for the group of countries that have really, really high rates. They would be ranked as red. The ones that are green and or amber, we're supposed to have unrestricted access to. We have an EU policy. It was devised in May. It came in on June the 15th, and all the routes in Europe opened on July the 1st. Ireland didn't participate. We didn't say we weren't participating, we just didn't participate. And then, under a little bit of pressure, the government was asked, well, you can't just put all the countries in the world on a no-fly list, which effectively the Department of Foreign Affairs did, all but essential travel. So they devised a green list, which was farcical to start with. Countries like Monaco, which doesn't have an airport, Greenland, to which we have no flights, were put on it, and it was a very small list. It was countries that had a rate of lower than 4, I think, at the time. And since then, it's got smaller and smaller until as of next Monday. Then there were none. Yeah.
Okay. So what you're really saying is, if you're prepared to go into the quarantine system, you can, according to the EU, move freely around. Is that what I'm interpreting from that?
You're absolutely right, except it's not according to the EU, it's according to the Irish government. The quarantine system is ours. The rest of Europe opened up. We decided to quarantine people arriving in the country. And the Irish were sort of under a little bit of pressure from the aviation industry saying, well, you've got to accept that there are places in Europe that have lower rates than us, and we need travel to continue. I mean, it's not just your bucket and spade out in Spain. Machines are going unserviced. Families are disconnected. It's a different Ireland to the one I grew up in. 17% of the Irish people are born abroad. So people were left in this situation where insurance wouldn't cover them, or they had to quarantine, and their employer were saying you had to do it unpaid. And they were saying at some stage we have got to allow travel, because what's happening, Irish business, is that the rest of Europe is flying around doing deals, signing contracts, and we're sitting here on our hands, watching it all slip away. And our Irish tourism industry, the summer was written off on them, and it looks like summer of 2021 is going to be written off.
Yeah, and then what you see here, despite all of this, despite locking the country up, despite moving to level whatever you want to move to, the cases are going up again.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was optics. International travel was never a source of infections. We have 20 over the previous 14 days detected of 140,000 people that came to the airport. If international travel was a county, it would be the cleanest county in Ireland. It would be one of the ones people are saying, don't lock us down. What we've seen across Europe is some of the countries that locked down very severely, like Hungary, have really high rates. And some of the countries that were stayed quite open and were free, like the likes of Sweden, would have a rate much, much lower than ours. And Italy, which was the source of the original outbreak, their case rate is less than half of ours. Interestingly enough, Northern Ireland, if it was a standalone country, would be the second worst in Europe. Its rate at the moment is 308 over the previous 14 per 100,000 over the previous 14 days. It would be second to Czechia and ahead of Spain, which was the worst performer until last week. So there isn't a correlation between your outbreak, your case rate within the country and international travel. What tends to happen everywhere, and I'm sorry to see it, is that it tends to be the less fashionable suburbs. It tends to be the more overcrowded households, tends to be the poor areas, it tends to be in other countries, the immigrant community that have the highest infection rate. But what Ireland did was they shut international travel down very, very heavily, not based on the data, not based on the science, but on the sort of perception, which is goes all the way back to the Black Death. If there's a plague, if there's an outbreak, pull up the drawbridge because the bad stuff is coming in from abroad.
Right, so it doesn't make it has made little sense. Around
the world,
yeah.
Peru was one of the first to shut down. It's by far the worst in deaths per million in the world. Colombia, my last trip outside of Europe in March, beginning of March, they shut down, closed all the international. So what we see is a pattern where if you have a well-organised health system, the impact doesn't seem to be so bad. If you have a health system which isn't functioning very well to start with, infection rates seem to be higher. That's a sort of a personal opinion that I bring to it. But looking at the data, as I say, there aren't clear correlations between shutting down and opening and keeping the borders open.
Would you advocate just opening it all up?
Oh, absolutely. I would say that international travel is not a source of infection, and when you close airports or shut flights down, you actually contribute to the problem. A lot has been made about the economic effect of it, and my experience of this would have been watching H1N when I was caught in Mexico in H1N1 in 2009, and travelling extensively in Africa during the Ebola. The countries that were shut down, what effectively happened was their health systems collapsed. Our health system, and the listeners will need no introduction to the fact that 43% of our health workers are from outside the country, the Filipino nurses and the Pakistani and Indian doctors. So if we continue to pursue a policy which effectively stops international travel, our health system will also, not just the tax that's, the income that's lost by the economic damage done by it, but our health system probably couldn't function. International travel, it's not the bad thing, it's not what's bringing infection, it's not what's causing the outbreaks, and it's essential to keep us all moving and to keep the economy moving. And if we continue to go alone and let the rest of Europe continue with international travel, because that's what Europe has been doing since June. It's not just happening next Tuesday. We might end up in a situation where we get our rates under control and we have a tidy cul-de-sac, but it will be a cul-de-sac.
Yeah, we will have no travel industry. I was talking to somebody who came in on a plane the other day to Belfast. There were 4 people on the plane. Like, you can't run a business like that.
Not only that, but can you, I think we took it for granted. We were one of the most connected islands in the world at the beginning of March. We took it for granted that we had 2 terrific, well-funded airlines in the island, Aer Lingus and Ryanair, all the foreign direct investment. How much of our economy is dependent on American investment? How much of our economy is dependent on our Irish people going out and selling things abroad? Almost everything we manufacture is exported. And from that hugely connected island at the centre of the world, I think was Leo Varadkar's phrase when he was Taoiseach, from that hugely connected position, we've decided to pull up the drawbridge, to behave as if the rest of the world didn't exist, to behave as if we were exceptional, that we were capable of bringing our infections under control without adhering to European CDC and World Health Organization, just going by our own local medical people. And it isn't working because we're not the worst in Europe. We're about halfway up the charts in Europe in terms of infection. But what we are doing by disconnecting is killing everything that fuels our economy. We're very dependent on the rest of the world. We're not a standalone economy with a big home market to buy all the stuff that we produce.
Okay, well, it remains to be seen. You make some very good points there, Eoghan, and particularly in relation to the fact that if we had left it open, what would have happened, and would it have made a blind bit of difference? That is, I suppose, centre to all of what you're saying.
And nobody's underestimating the scale of the crisis, because what the air industry has been very careful to do is to implement the very, very strict safety standards. These guys do safety. They brought the number of air crashes down to a very small level. To the extent extent that one plane crash dominates the headlines for weeks, whereas there would have been nearly one a week or a month going back 40 years. So safety is what they do. Looking after their passengers is what they do. They flew through Ebola, they flew through H1N1, they flew through SARS. They know what they're doing. We sort of discarded those safety standards and said that air travel is bad and it's not good for us. And we are, as a result of rejecting that, we are almost turning our back on the safety standards that the rest of Europe is bringing in other areas, and it's not good for the messaging, and it's certainly not good for the economy.
Okay, just final point, if you just clarify. So from next week, if the EU foreign ministers decide on adopting their new traffic light system, where do we sit?
It depends on whether we sign up for it.
Oh, God. All right.
This is really, really important. The mood music is that we're not prepared to sign up for it. We said we would, and the Taoiseach made a song and a dance about we were going to align with Europe, and the European model was the one to follow. And then the Green List only picked one of the metrics, one of the 4 metrics, and Eamon Ryan has been talking this week about delaying the sign-up. He said that it'll only be sort of protocols on testing and things like that will sign up for, and actual in the removal of obstacles to movement, which in our case is the 14-day self-isolation, is probably the correct phrase rather than quarantine. But it does look that they are looking for ways to keep that in